What's going on, guys? Welcome to Beyond Politics, episode 16. This is an in-depth conversation where we bring our perspective to relevant political topics of the day. I'm host Jared, and with me as always is Seth. And we're going to talk to you guys a little bit today about the Google memo that came out.
It's been kind of taking a little bit of the media by storm, it seems, and a little bit of outrage here and there is always nice.
Yeah, exactly, because it's not a boring enough world already, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be something else to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, basically, so this was a memo that was written by a software engineer.
A software engineer at Google. He wrote it for the on the Google forums for like the employees, so it wasn't a public thing that he wrote out. But then
just got leaked out. Obviously.
They got a hold of it. Yeah, when we heard
about
about it. And then originally we didn't know his name.
Yeah.
But now his name was written on it. It's not like he tried to hide behind his name, but it was James Damore.
James Damore, yeah, and he releases a 10-page memo, and it's titled "Google's Ideological Echo Chamber." So this guy basically kind of writes this 10-page memo. He starts out by saying, quote, "I value diversity and inclusion. I'm not denying that sexism exists, and I don't endorse using stereotypes. When addressing the gap in the representation in the population, we need to take a look at population level differences and distributions. If we can't have an honest discussion about this, we can never truly solve the problem," end quote. So he's talking about Google's ideological echo chamber, and what he ends up saying, kind of expounding upon that, he says, quote, "This is silencing and has created an ideological echo chamber that has some ideas that are too sacred to be honestly discussed." Obviously, he views like that's a problem. He says then, quote, "At Google, we talk so much about unconscious bias as it applies to race and gender, but we rarely discuss our moral biases." Then he lays out later on, he says that neither side is 100% correct. He points out different biases on the left and on the right. He later identifies himself as a classic liberal who has values as, quote, "individualism and reason." He goes in and he talks about the biological differences between men and women, and he talks about kind of the higher drive of status for men, and then how women typically value people and how men typically value things. This is kind of, this isn't really new stuff. It's pretty, if you take genders and, on average, this is typically true of men and it's typically true of women. But then he kind of jumps into more, because what it's really addressing is kind of women in the workforce in Google.
Right. So there's a big discrepancy or a big talk going on right now in Silicon Valley in the tech industry on diversity, like trying to push this idea of diversity hardcore, that there's too many white men when that's not actually reflective of the people wanting to work there, right?
Yeah.
So you have places like I'm pretty sure it was Twitter that just straight up hired a bunch of women because they wanted to be diverse, and you're seeing a lot of companies try to do this to try to improve their diversity quota, because it's kind of been a thing where it's like, well, why are there so many white people? It seems Silicon Valley is very racist or sexist or whatever, and obviously these companies don't want to be viewed like that. And I would argue that I don't know if it's racism or sexism involved. It's just kind of how it happened,
Yes.
But there's also been talks of the male versus female as well, which is a bigger topic because there's so few women in this field. Now that actually Google is being investigated currently because there's been talks, and they're being investigated by the Department of Justice, right?
Yeah.
About a pay inequality between men and women for the same work,
which is totally a thing.
Well, if they're being investigated, obviously they're innocent until proven guilty, but being paid differently for the same work is different than the mythical pay gap of men and women making less money. Like if they are legit being paid less, that's an issue. And so they shouldn't care to be investigated, because if they're not doing anything wrong, who cares? Just get investigated and move on. So that's happening currently, and it's been an ongoing thing in Silicon Valley and the tech world of like this whole idea of we need more women, we need more diversity. And so what he kind of is this manifesto that he wrote was a lot about well, maybe we need to look at this and not necessarily just hire a bunch of women. Like maybe there's reasons there's more men and less women because biological things, Yeah. And so that's where a lot of people I think had issue with, because it's kind of, even though he did back up a lot of what he said with sources, it's still kind of
because you
hard
can't
to
say
hear
that
that
men
like
and women are different.
Yeah, well, that's taboo nowadays. But like, just saying, like he kind of laid out like the differences of women and then how those equate to programming. He used programming as a lot of his examples.
Yeah.
On like men they're more because they're better at math or they have different cognitive skills than women in general. He was very good at always saying generally.
Yeah.
Or he would always cite when he said things, which I liked a lot. But then he went on to continue and he talked about there's non-discriminatory ways to reduce the gender gap. This idea that there's not enough women. So he said that they need to make engineering more people-oriented, which is that it needs to be more on par with programming collaboration. He said that like biologically, he was saying that generally women are more cooperative and women on average look for more work-life balance. And that could be a way that like why the gender gap exists is because, well, maybe it's just what women tend to
That's proven, by the way, when you take kind of the group sum of women and the group sum of men, and women on average work, I think it was 6 hours a week less than men, just taking all the jobs full-time and part-time.
Yeah, and like men are more active to initiate part-time work, right?
Yeah.
Or at least work extra.
And
women, I guess, are more like, this is all generalized. Like this is like
they
saying,
have their priorities straight.
Right.
They want to go home and spend it with their families.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think it's valid for discussion. Like, I don't know why we can't talk about this. Which is a part I think me and a lot of people had an issue when people were trying to crucify this guy. Is like, well, why can't we just discuss this? Because he did cite studies, and some of these things you can't really dispute that in general these are traits that are more feminine or more masculine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what if there's other genders? I mean, he didn't talk about the other genders.
That's
so
true. That's true.
A little
bit
that
could be left out.
Yeah, and so I mean. I don't know, man. This, like we said, the outrage with this manifesto that this guy wrote. I mean, I think that it was a lot of people trying to find something to be mad at.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I mean, because he says later here, he says, quote, "I strongly believe in gender and racial diversity, and I think we should strive for more. However, to achieve a more equal gender and race representation, Google has created several discriminatory practices."
Right.
And this was kind of a big thing that he hit on, how there's these, I guess, these different kind of mentoring programs or
within Google for their
employees, for their employees to learn certain skills. But it's only open to certain minorities, and it's excluded to, I guess it's mainly white men.
Well, he mentioned there are some that are women only, there are some that are minority only, and as a white man, he's like excluded from a lot of these activities.
Yeah.
And
it makes sense for it to be open for everyone, right? I mean, that's pretty basic gender equality, like equality stuff, right? Equality for all, same playing field. Everyone should have access to the same stuff.
I guess. I mean, but then at the same time, we're not equal. So different. We like, you know what I'm saying? Like men need different things that women need. That's also biological.
They wouldn't agree with you.
Yeah, I'm just saying like that. So I mean, it's weird because it's like it's a lot more complicated than people are trying to make it. Like people trying to just say he hates women or whatever. And I think that anyone that says like, oh, this guy obviously hates women, like they clearly haven't read through this because he's not making a strong argument in either way. He puts out his opinion. He's not trying to condemn, and he was just saying like, this is what's going on. This is what I think, and he actually gives examples of ways he thinks that it could be bridged. Yeah. Because he wants to start a discussion. Because like he said, with the ideological echo chamber that seems to exist in Google specifically, conservative ideas are basically just a non-start. Yeah. Which I can totally see. Yeah. Like absolutely. It's no secret that they seem to lean left, you know? Absolutely. Like they've supported Democratic candidates. A lot of their policies with their whole diversity stuff is a more left-leaning idea of this diversity for no matter what, we need to have diversity. Yeah. And so I mean, like I said, I think it's completely reasonable what he talked about, and I can't understand these people freaking out about it.
Oh, but freak out they did, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you had, this is probably my favorite position of all time. This is the Google Vice President of Diversity, Integrity, and Governance.
Yeah, what kind of job is that?
Interesting job there. But so basically, she responded to the memo saying, quote, "Like many of you, I found that it advanced incorrect assumptions about gender." One thing. Why don't you just like say the parts that you thought were incorrect instead of just saying the whole thing was incorrect? Because a lot of the stuff that he said is backed by statistics, like we were saying. So
by specific studies, and I mean, people would argue. I saw a lot of people arguing, well, you know, those are out of date, or this isn't the stuff. Like this is the study I saw.
Then.
Exactly.
That's what I would love to see.
Have a competing study. Like say, well, no, this study shows the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be a great discussion. Well, why is this different than this study?
Yeah.
Like,
and the worst part about it is she goes on to say that I'm not going to link it here because it's not a viewpoint that I or this company endorses, promotes, or encourages. So basically, like, she's not obviously if the employees wanted to see it, I'm sure they had access to it, but she's not going to even show it because it's like, this is such a horrible memo that was created. I'm not going to even put it out there because it doesn't represent our company in any way, and you guys shouldn't even look at it. Really, it's not, you know what I mean?
Which is this is what's the irony of the way Google has responded, has been right in line with what he outlined.
It plays into the narrative that he's
exactly,
talking about,
because he talked about the fact that inside Google, this idea, like, it's diversity and stuff has kind of become a moralistic argument where if you're against whatever they think, then it's immoral or it's bad. And it's like, so then even then it's like, well, so I'm bad or wrong for thinking differently, you know?
Exactly.
And it's exactly what, well, I'm not even going to show it, you know, like, it is so bad. Like, it's really, honestly, we're linking it below.
Yeah.
You can read it for yourself in full with all the sources and everything. And it's not that crazy. And it's not anything that is like too bad to be freaking linked to.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole social justice warrior, right? If you're not going to attack, you're just going to attack the person, not the ideas, kind of thing. We talk about this all the time.
Yes.
But it's just not. It's not going to go anywhere, construct or fix the problem at all by just attacking the person. But the CEO had some words to say about it as well.
So that the diversity, what was it? Diversity, integrity, and governance. She responded before really any action had been taken. With this memo, and then, like, what was it, today, I think, or Monday afternoon,
Monday evening, I think.
He had been fired from Google,
yeah.
Which I don't know. I kind of expected that. I mean, it's bad for business, kind of. You know, they are a business, and it would be bad for business to have this out in the air. But anyway,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, the Google CEO Sundar Pichai, in an excerpt that he wrote to the employees, so he wrote this long email to the employees. Will be linked below. We can't go through it all; it's really long. But what he said was, "It's our job to build great products for users that make a difference in their lives. To suggest that a group of our colleagues have traits that make them less biologically suited to that work is offensive and not okay. Our coworkers should not have to worry that each time they open their mouths to speak in a meeting, they have to prove that they are not like the memo states. Being agreeable rather than assertive, showing a lower stress tolerance, or being neurotic." Those are things that he listed as biologically female traits.
Yes.
And I love it when he says that we don't want them to have to worry every time they open their mouth.
Exactly.
Except we just fired this guy for opening his mouth. Again, playing right into the narrative that this guy had written in his manifesto.
Absolutely.
Manifesto, whatever. Yeah.
Memo. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. So like we said, he came out. He confirmed that he was fired. So he's been fired for it. He said that he's going to take some legal action. He's probably going to sue them. Now, once again, we're not really talking about, when we discuss this, now that we've laid it out, we're not going to really talk about the legality of it. I think that Google has the right to hire or fire any employee they want. They're a private company. The only way that I could see this gaining any legal traction, which is still a long shot, is him saying that he was whistleblowing the illegal discriminatory practices that they're
really
doing.
Hard to prove.
It's I mean, I guess it would be if it's illegal to offer things to some people but not offer them to others, like offering.
But they could have just as easily been like, minorities. These classes are for anyone, but like you really. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, they might not have outlined it specifically, but it was understood.
Like I said, it's probably a long shot. I don't think.
Right, but I mean, they fired him. They cited what was it, violations in the terms of their
employee
conduct, right?
Yeah, the code of conduct.
So which I think, I mean, Google's notorious for being very secretive. Inside, they have crazy non-disclosure agreements with their employees, and so when you were reading through this, he disclosed some private things going on in Google, which. I mean, I think that merit alone, he was obviously getting fired. Like, there was, regardless of whether or not they agree or not, I mean, they needed to fire him for that because you can't just let people be doing this. And two, it's very bad publicity to have this going around. Obviously, cut the cord as fast as you can for a business. I mean, they want to make money. This is bad for business.
I think it's bad publicity because it's a bad code of conduct.
But I'm saying he's going to be out of the news. Well, I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, but I agree that it's no shock that they fired him.
Yeah.
But I think it's crazy if you're a company that's promoting diversity and all of this stuff. Yeah, diversity.
Diversity of thought, again, non-existent.
Yeah, well, see, you're promoting diversity, and then the second someone has an opposing viewpoint, it's not like he's saying, yeah, the Nazis were right. They did a great job. He's promoting something pretty reasonable and rational. You know what I mean? No hate speech is in there at all in any way. A lot of it's sourced out. You may agree with some of or you may disagree with some of the stuff he said, but nothing he's saying is ridiculous. So if you're this big, great, diversified company, but then the second someone speaks out in a private company-wide memo. It's not like he just released this to everyone. Then you fire him. It doesn't really. At best, you're a hypocrite, and at worst, you're trying to silence what he's saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's pretty disingenuous in my opinion, really. And then, but I mean, I get that obviously they're going to fire him. Like we said, it's no surprise that Google is more on the left. Google, Facebook, Apple, all of them are more left-leaning. I don't think it's really a surprise. But I don't know, man. I really have a problem. One thing that kind of bugged me about it, and then you can jump to you, is like Google is it the biggest? Google or Apple, the largest company in the world? One of them. Google is like the way that people... the Google search engine is the way that people kind of get to information and sort through facts and get their information, right? They're not just some random clothing or tire company. So they're also developing a lot of cutting edge AI stuff. So when you have those people who are so morally set in what they believe, but then they're creating these algorithms and specific AI stuff, I mean, it's a little concerning to me that whatever they say what they're going to be providing in their algorithms, and we've already seen this a little bit with YouTube with people being demonetized and certain people being banned. Yeah. It's concerning to me, not for the fact that I think that they have the right to fire whoever they want, but just the fact that Google is so big and so powerful, and they could censor speech at any time they wanted with their algorithms. And nothing would stop them legally. Yeah. So I think, and then the fact that they hold these viewpoints.
Well, that's not true legally. There's been many times where they've actually had to pay out because they've been sued for either stifling a search result or whatever. They need to give equal search result. Like,
well, you could say a sense of it in demonetizing videos or kicking Jordan Peterson.
Well, no, even
off
with
of
like
YouTube.
people have said that I know in Europe it's happened a lot where they've said that Google's search results are skewed towards Google products, and instead of showing what would actually be the algorithmic thing, and then they actually ended up proving it, and then Google had to pay them back. Like they're paying a lot of money right now because of that. Yeah. So there is a little bit of keeping them in check, but no, you're absolutely right that it's an insane amount of power that they're going to have. And moving forward, I think there's going to be even more. They're getting into the self-driving car business. Yeah. And it's actually been a big discussion with a lot of people in tech is that just like anything else in the world, there's no such thing as a non-biased whatever. No one makes anything without a bias. Whether or not you understand it or you're cognizant of it or whatever, there's some kind of little bit. And so these people writing the code, like you said, it's inherently going to be somewhat biased. And the goal would be to minimize that as much as possible, or like I think what it should be is to have things that like balance it out. Like this guy was saying, is that he never advocated for it to turn right. Google. He advocated to have both, and that both were needed.
He even went so far to say neither one is completely right.
Right, because neither one is right. I think the middle is where is I think the best place to be, and where most companies should strive for. For me personally, I mean, I thought what he said had some good points, and I didn't understand the outrage. And I was actually interested is you told me about Ben Shapiro going about it, and you said Ben Shapiro had a problem with it, and I had been listening to some of my tech podcasts, and they were on the opposite side. Yeah. So when I heard that Ben Shapiro was against it, I was like, that's interesting, because I've actually been hearing the opposite side, like he actually was out of line. Yeah. And I hadn't really looked into it much. I'd just been listening, like I said. And so I think that both sides are kind of twisting this to help them, their narrative. And I think if people actually read it, there'd be a much better discussion. I think a lot of people are commenting without actually reading it. You saw some woman on Twitter saying if she worked with him, she'd walk up and punch him and take the assault because it's worth it. It's worth it. Like, what the heck? It's just a piece of, it's words. Yeah. It's not even like physical. It was an email. Yeah. But I mean, I had some issues with what he was writing. I mean, his whole thing was the difference between men and women biologically, generally. Yeah. But then at the end, you have him say that, like, I'm just advocating. He says, I'm advocating for the opposite. Treat people as individuals, not as just another member of their group. Like, that's what you've been doing this whole thing. Like, you've been kind of grouping up women, grouping up men, saying women do this, men do this. So I was a little bit like, this seems like backwards to what you've been saying the whole time. But on the general, I thought it brought up interesting things, and I do think it's worth talking about. Like, the diversity for diversity's sake, and just hiring an equal amount of women and an equal amount of men is not the solution. Yeah. But the solution is also not maybe like trying to, because there's been studies to prove that diverse groups perform better, like groups that have men and women or different, they perform at a better pace, because like with the left and the right and bouncing out, like there's some things women do better, there are some things men generally do better, and it's important to have both. And so like when he was citing that, like, well, women are worse in this and this and men are better in these, it's like that may be true, but maybe he never talked about, well, what happens when you combine them, which is what I was like, well, what, like, you're talking about this, like, what if we had them both? Like, let's not say on an individual they do better and they do, like, they're better at this, like, what if you put them together, what what happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which he didn't really talk about, which I think he would have liked to have heard him talk about.
I think the crux of kind of what he was saying here is a similar approach that I have, is like women might be in that position and do just as good of a job, but I think what I was getting from it is he's not really for the affirmative action pushes for it.
Right, because he talked about different standards for them.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's something that's worth talking about. Like, is it a good idea to have different standards for men and women?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I mean, I would think that.
I would think not, because once again, I think the basis of equality, like if you're doing a specific job, I would want the person to be doing it to be at the best standard. Right?
Yeah, but I mean.
So if the standard is higher for, let's switch it.
But what if it's not best or worst, but different? Because women and men are different.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you think of a job and there's certain standards, you think of one being better than the other. I'm not super engaged in the tech industry, so I'm not going to know exactly how it works. But just typically when you're interviewing, there's a higher standard, there's a lower standard. Which is better? Typically you go for the higher standard.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of like creative things, and it's like when you're doing, like when you have multiple, for instance, like if you had, like I've done a lot of architecture projects and everyone's in the project equal, but it's like, it's not good to have, like some people are better at 3D modeling. Some people might be better coders. Some people might be better problem solvers. They might suck at coding. Yeah. So it's not a good idea to just hire the best coders, because in this instance they are better than them. But it's like we need bits and pieces.
Well, it's for the job, right? So if you're hiring an architect, you want the best architect. So
but there's no such thing as the best architect
or the best coder. If you're hiring
but that's the thing. Is
they're just different.
There's
coders.
difference, exactly. You can hire a coder and one be really good at maybe someone's really good at organization, because that's a big part of code is readability, because you need to be able to come back to it later. You might have another guy that's really good at back end stuff, and they're both coders.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're both applying for coding jobs. You know, and so it's not. I don't know if it's necessarily better or worse, but it's different standards. I don't know if that's necessarily bad. It's very complicated, and it's kind of a case by case basis. I think
overall, I would vouch for more of the free market figuring out and companies figuring out on their own who to hire, as opposed to government regulation stepping in and saying you need to have this many of X or this many.
But isn't this a result of the free market? I mean, has any of this diversity
affirmative action is
but for Google though, affirmative action was for schools, right?
It's for companies.
It's for companies. Okay.
They have to hire specific. They have to fill a quota of how many people are working.
Okay, because I mean, I thought a lot of this feels like Google
going above and beyond, though. Like I think
doing good.
Yeah. So we talked about bottom line. Do you think it was kind of, once again, not the legality, just the moral aspect of it? Do you think it's a good thing that he was fired for what he said, or do you agree? Not necessarily do you agree, because I think we both think that it's no surprise that Google fired them.
Yeah.
But like, do you think it's a good thing that in a corporation like this, when someone speaks out, and so my problem, we talked about he violated the code of conduct, and that very well could be for, like you were saying, they can't really talk out that much, and they're under kind of strict, I guess, regulation on what they can say. But my problem is that they didn't say it was because he did this. They said it was because he was offensive and promoting gender stereotypes.
We don't want to have people be afraid to open their mouth.
Exactly. So it makes me think that was more the reason as opposed to the other one. So if it was for that reason, then I would like them to have said that, and then I would say, okay, I may agree with you, but you probably should have addressed it another way, or you can go ahead and do this, but expect to be fired because it's blatantly in there that you're not allowed to do this and you're doing it. My problem is that they're saying that he's fired for something else.
Right.
In there.
It's kind of disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because I think if I was like, if I was running Google and I had to fire him, I would have fired him, but I would have liked to have I would have been like, listen, I'm totally down for what we're doing to be, critique. Like, again, I don't think anything's above critique and ridicule and criticism. But like this, okay, so we specifically have this code of conduct that you can't do this, and unfortunately in that memo he divulged too much information, and we can't set the precedent that that's okay.
But so the argument is, right, he's just a software engineer. Like, who is he divulging the information to? It was an employee-based memo. So it's not going outside of the company.
Yeah,
like he's giving it to all of the people inside the company. So it's not like if he made it public, I would say, like, sorry, dude, you're gone. You can't do this. There has to be a certain amount of loyalty that my employees have to the company. Even if you're saying something correct, take it to your superior.
Right.
Don't post it publicly. But what he didn't post it publicly. It was an inside employee memo that he sent out to other employees.
How did it originally get out, I wonder? Didn't even look into that.
I think he might have just emailed some.
Because I know that Gizmodo went and got it, and then that's where I think it kind of started. And there was another.
I mean, he sent it to a lot of Google employees. I mean, it only takes one person outraged to leak it, right? I'm sure they knew what would happen.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, actually. That'd be very interesting, because that's true. If he didn't send it publicly, and I mean, I kind of want to double check that now, because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously though, he obviously got fired because he was right. Like, I mean, I don't think it's anyone's assuming that he got fired solely because of the terms of conduct. I mean, I would like to think that, but I would probably venture that no.
Biases, yeah.
Probably not.
But it'll definitely be interesting to kind of see how this story evolves and what happens. I'll be interested to kind of follow what happens legally if he has any precedent in there. Like I said, I think it's a long shot. It probably won't happen. Google has way more money than he does for attorneys and stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
I think, and plus it's hard to prove anyways, I guess.
But I wonder what's going to happen with because he did say there are other employees that agree with him, and there's 100% a lot of conservers in tech. There's just, I mean, statistically,
even people in the middle, I would think would kind of agree with what.
And so what's going to happen now? Are they going to be like? Is there going to be a chilling effect where they're even going to talk about it less, or is this going to be like, well, this is ridiculous, and then now more people start being like, you can't fire all of us.
Yeah,
I'll be interested to see what happens, and I
would like to see that.
That would be cool,
but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and
I
just think diversity for diversity's sake is such a bad idea.
Yeah,
it's so dumb. And it's like the difference of looking at, it's like if you look at a room, like a lot of people look at a room, it's all men. Okay, well they're discriminating against women.
Yeah,
like that's the mentality they first think of without any proof. And it's like, well, why can't you just look at the room and say it's all white men and be like, well, maybe they were the best for the job. Maybe that's just how it happened. Maybe, I don't know.
I tend to agree.
I think
it's definitely an interesting story. And once again, I think it's a big story because Google is the powerhouse that it is, right? It's the titan of industry that it is. It's the biggest company, second biggest, whatever company in the entire world. So this stuff it matters a lot more what the Google CEO and what Google corporate is pushing as policy as opposed to, just any other company out there.
Yeah, if it was like a little no-name company, which is actually why it's more impressive this guy did this. I mean, he had to have known. I mean, there were parts of it where he didn't.
He's a smart guy. He went to Harvard. He got a PhD, I think.
Biology or something.
Yeah,
which is weird. Why are you working as a coder or whatever? But whatever.
Took him on.
But this guy. I mean, I think there were definitely parts in there that he could have not had gone as far. And I think he kind of understood that he was going to get fired. And I really like also that. Well, I was going to say I like that he put his name on it, but. Maybe it would have been smarter to just think that, there's someone.
Well, he put it out anonymously.
No, his name was always on it. Yeah.
Really? Oh, I heard it was anonymous.
No, we didn't know. We didn't know who it was for a while.
Okay.
And then they're like, he said it was him. He was like, it was me.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to cower or anything.
Definitely knew he was.
Yeah, he knew he was going to get fired. But at the same time, when you put your name on something, he had. Do
you respect that more than just throwing it out there anonymously?
Kind of, but at the same time, though, it could have been kind of cool to have been like, well, who is it?
And then it's Google, though. They're going to know who's doing
I know,
stuff.
right?
I mean, there's no anonymous.
Like, listen,
Google,
guys,
right?
they would have already known. Then he divulged 6 other secrets of how they would have known.
They would already know everything.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say because I think this is worth discussing. And honestly, read it. It's not that long. It's only 10 pages. We're linking it below.
And it's a lot of bullet points. It's easy you skim through.
Easy to read. I mean, if they're blue things, click on them. They're hyperlinks to like sources of what he's saying. He does have a couple weird graphs in there that I don't understand because they're not sourced. But I mean, check it out and let us know what you think down below.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. And as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down and let us know what we did wrong. As always, guys, stay informed.